The lake lay like a shield hammered flat by a god and set upon the earth to cool. Mist moved across it in long, slow veils, catching on the reeds and the blackened tooth stumps of trees drowned when the water was raised long ago. A heron stood in the shallows with its blade beak poised, each ripple around its legs a ring of sliding pewter. Out on the open expanse, the first light of the day tried and failed to find brilliance in the sky. It bled instead into a dim silver, reflecting a castle that was more ruin than refuge, enormous and indifferent, as if some reptile had crawled onto the shore in a previous age and died there with its ribs still lifted to the sun. Harrenhal watched the morning as it watched everything. Without blinking or breath, the burned towers rose from the fog, one lanced and cracked, one gaping, one knitted into a crooked crown of stone. The outer walls were too vast to be believed as the work of men, and yet men paced them, small as ants, cloaks drawn tight against the damp and the river-borne chill. Fires had been kindled in braziers there. Coals shifted and muttered, drawing sparks that drifted up and vanished like tiny souls unsure whether to fly or fall. In the lower bailey, an old woman bent over a cauldron that steamed with the breath of onions, barley, and bones. Her hair was as white as the salt crust at the lake's edge. She knew the measure of wood by smell and the moment when a broth yielded its stubbornness. This castle had been her home since the days when the earls of something or other had played at being kings. Names slid off her now like rain off slate, but she remembered faces. Children grown, then gray, then gone. Goodwives with laughter like bells. Men with winter in their beards and burial mounds called by first names when no one listened. She stirred and looked toward the gate. There had been talk all night, that the river had carried news faster than a rider, that the war which had unfolded one tent, then another, along the riverbanks and across wheat fields, might yet be folded away again like a cloth. "A wolf," the scullion girl whispered beside her, breath frosting in little clouds. "They say the wolf rides under a white flag." "Wolves don't take flags," the old woman said, but the words were soft, not scolding. "It's men that wear banners, and men who break bread, and men who break oaths. Keep your fingers away from that pot." The day pushed gently at the fog without wholly moving it. From the road that hugged the lake's rim, 6 riders became 10, then a score, then a few more tucked in like careful stitches. They kept their formation modest, quiet, a white cloth hanging from a yew haft held straight up by a young man with a hawk's sharpness in his face. The hoofbeats were measured, iron on hard earth, where the causeway began. Slabs of old stone slick with a slickness you couldn't entirely see, only feel underfoot. The company slowed further. The horses blew steam. Somewhere in the rushes a frog sprang and vanished. Even the larks seemed to be listening. He rode at their head, the man those whispers named, and if you'd never seen him you might have expected a wolf-made man, all jagged edges and bristling rage. He had the look of the north, though the kind that water and wind carve rather than man's chisel. Spare, plain, lines around the mouth cut by restraint. His hair, darker than the mud, was shot with the first threads of winter. He wore it bound. Steel and leather were cut for use rather than show. The cloak was good wool and travel-stained, clasped by a simple pin in the shape of a leaf. His sword hung on his left. Its hilt bore the touch of an ancestor's hand and the memory of cold. He leaned a little on each rise and dip of the horse's motion, one gloved hand holding the reins with the absent-minded tenderness of a man who had done this since he was small enough that his feet had stuck out straight from the saddle. The gatehouse tower made a dark arch against dull sky as they approached. The guards there had Lannister colors about them, a red of dried blood, a yellow like coin or old straw. Their helms were open, breath plumed. Word had run ahead, and more men had gathered on the wall walks to peer down. One of them, a tall knight with chestnut hair and a face like hammered bronze, descended to meet the riders in the yard where puddles mirrored the mainsails of cloud overhead. He waited, a hand on his sword hilt, but his posture was courteous. He had fought enough war to know that courtesy is either a covering for steel or a way to keep your own hands from trembling, and he had long since misplaced his tremors. "Lord Stark," he said as the riders drew up, voice carrying well despite the damp that swallowed sound. "You come under flag and you come to Harrenhal. "That is bold or foolish, and I have never heard that you were foolish." The man on the gray horse reined in. He pulled his gloves fingers off with his teeth and offered a bare hand that showed scars like pale threads. "Sir Adam," he said. The accent was north, but winter-wrapped rather than winter-harsh. "Some men have called me that, and lived. The boldness, not the foolishness. But I would not test both epithets in one day, if I can help it." Adam Marbrand took the hand. His grip was firm, not crushing. He seemed faintly surprised to find warmth in it. "Our Lord will see you," he said. "He has seen the banner and accepted the terms of your passage." "Bread and salt?" Lord Stark asked. "And more," Sir Adam said, with something that might have been a ghost of a smile. "We have broth this morning, and the onions have not burned." "Then I will eat your bread and taste your onions," Lord Stark said. He glanced past the night at the building that loomed like a cliff face. A rook as large as a cat flapped along the eaves as if dragging chains. "And we will speak." There is a silence that falls in certain places when men who carry heavy names walk through them. Not fear, exactly. Not reverence, which requires more faith than war leaves unspent. It is a silence that has weight, because the air is braced in anticipation of what might be said that cannot be recalled. Men in leather jerkins and scaled mail stepped back as the riders led their horses under the gate's shadow. Ned Stark, Eddard of Winterfell, whose words were winter's promise rather than summer's flourish, felt the cold hang there like a damp cloak. The gates were open. He thought of other gates, and of a city that smelled of hot stone and sweet rot, and of a boy with a sword too heavy for him being brave where bravery was a narrow bridge over a devil's gorge. He could taste iron. He could hear a hammer far off where a farrier hastened his heartbeat into iron shape. He took the measure of the yard, the stacked wood, the slop buckets, the women carrying baskets slung low on their hips, the gaunt dog that kept its distance and its counsel. He watched the watchers as much as he watched the walls. There were fewer banners here than rumors had given him to expect. Fewer drums, too. Harrenhal was large enough that a small army could hide inside like fish within cavern water. The old woman by the pot put a wooden ladle to her lips, breathed careful steam, and nodded once as if someone had asked a question out loud. The scullion girl had her fingers interlocked despite the admonition. She watched the northern lord dismount with neat economy and take off his cloaked wetness in one practiced sweep to shake it. Once, twice, and fold it over his arm as if it were a thing of some worth. Near him stood a man with a bad knee, a man whose beard had 3 colors in it, and a young rider whose eyes seemed always to want to be elsewhere, as if the walls might have secrets if he looked at them from the corners of his sight. These were not the gilded lords the girl had seen blundering through the hall with wineskins and laughing hysterically. These men saved their laughter for after, if at all. Bread was brought. Rough loaves split and steaming, crust crackling under thumb, the crumb warm and damp. Salt was set in a little dish of beaten pewter with a rampant lion hammered in the bottom where the grains drifted over it like an avalanche burying a too proud statue. Ned Stark broke bread with his own hands. He dipped and ate. His men did likewise. At his nod, the boy with the white flag, who now held it like a child holds a bundle it has misliked to carry too long, leaned it against the wall near an upended barrel. "Tell Lord Tywin that I am come as agreed," Ned Stark said. "He is not a man who waits badly," Sir Adam replied, "but he likes to arrive after everyone else has arranged themselves. He thinks it reveals their habits. This way, my lord." They went through hallways whose stones remembered fire. Even within, the mist kept a finger extended in the air. The passages swallowed men and gave them back to each other some paces later, as if they'd been considered and found just acceptable. They passed a gallery with a tapestry of a hunting scene whose colors had turned to the shades of faded moss. Foxes become brown smears, hounds with eyes like white seeds. A boy polishing a helmet looked up and around and down again in a single swift arc, as if his head were the arm of a compass. Tywin Lannister's presence was like a different weather you stepped into. He used a chamber that would have been considered a great hall elsewhere, its windows slit narrow, its hearth vast enough for a man to stand inside without stooping. There was no extravagance to the room beyond the extravagance that one must commit to war. The better maps, the cedar chests sealed against damp, the table as scarred as a soldier's knuckles. A banner hung behind him, red and yellow, with a lion that looked less a beast than the idea of dominion a child might draw when told to picture it. He stood when Lord Stark entered. The gesture was not friendliness so much as an acknowledgement that one man must not make another man seem small by sitting while he is made to stand. "Lord Stark," Tywin said. His voice was tempered fire, heat without visible flame. "Winterfell is far." "Not so far," Ned replied. He removed his gloves, held them together in his left, and let his right rest on the table's edge as if confirming that it was real. "When the road is straight and the need is pressing." "Need makes men deceptive," Tywin said. "Straight roads, like straight lines on a map, pretend that the world is simple." "Maps don't pretend anything," Ned said. "Men do." This won a small tilt of Tywin's head. His eyes were the color you might expect of a man whose house colors were crimson and gold. Green would have been too kind, brown too yielding. They were the pale yellow of a cat's in certain light, though to say so would be to sentimentalize him. They were an alloy. There was metal in them. Kevin Lannister stood at his brother's right shoulder, solid where Tywin was blade-like, his loyalty a taut length of rope. Ser Adam stepped a pace aside and waited with the patience of a man who had learned that his counsel was valued when it was not thrust upon anyone. "We keep the outward forms," Tywin said. He offered bread by gesture. Ned had already eaten. He sampled a second mouthful anyway, not out of hunger but of respect for the ritual that separates negotiation from murder. "You came under truce. You will depart the same way, unless you choose to dishonor your own flag." "I have not made a career of such choices," Ned said. "No," Tywin said. He looked at the Northern Lord as if taking him apart and counting the pieces. "You have made other ones that puzzled me. But do not suppose that I was not grateful to be puzzled. Predictable men are easier to kill. The world collects such corpses." Ned's mouth twitched. It might have been almost a smile, though it had no warmth. "We both have puzzled each other enough," he said. "Shall we speak as men whose hands are not clean enough to be insulted by the other's trade?" "You come to a castle I hold," Tywin said. "At a moment when men like to whisper about bravery and madness, I prefer to talk of the grain stores of the Riverlands, the width of the fords, the stubbornness of Tully vassals, and which bridges will survive a flood. We can speak as generals, or we can speak as men who would be rid of the responsibility of commanding generals. The second category is found mostly among singers." "You have never liked singers," Ned said. "Song makes a man forgive himself," Tywin said. "I prefer men who remember." "Then remember this," Ned said, and placed both hands on the table now, leaning forward slightly. "I have come to aver what I averred before the Iron Throne when truth still had an audience there. Men die when lords refuse to be the ones endangered. Houses lose sons. Fields are salted by tears. We will not sing our excuses to the widows. We will carve them badly on stone if we are lucky and be cursed by their children if we are honest. You value the realm by counting. I value it by promises. Either way, the sum here is blood." He let the words sit. Kevin shifted, not impatiently, but as if a weight had found him. Tywin did not blink. He had learned long ago how to measure a man by the gap after a demand. He saw a man in front of him whom others called honorable with that sneer that meant a man was more usable because he was predictable. But Tywin did not think Ned predictable. He thought him consistent. That was different and differently dangerous. "You propose," Tywin said, half-statement, not question. "A challenge," Ned said. In some rooms such a word would make men draw breath sharply. Here it fell as a tool laid between two craftsmen, one of whom might strike with it, the other of whom might hoist it to see how well-balanced it was. Kevin's hand twitched toward the hilt at his side in habit, not intention. Adam Marbrand's gaze went to Tywin's face and then back to Ned's, taking both like reading the same letter twice. "You want to be rid of me easily, then?" Tywin said with a faint dryness. "Believe me, I have had thoughts in restless hours. But you have mismeasured me, Stark, if you think I will agree to any contest in which my life is weighed against my cause. I will not lose my head for the sake of anyone's song of chivalry. I do not propose to cut off your head, Ned said, or to win a song. I propose a form of settlement older than many of our fathers' fathers. Not trial. The gods care too little for our quarrels to weigh them justly. I propose we agree upon a contention that will bind our houses and armies as the outcome binds stones in a frost, where they swell together or crack apart. You have the north behind you, Tywin said, and I have a west that knows what it is to close ranks, and a riverlands that must be taught not to burn. What contends between us? Summon the bones of old customs if you like, or dust off a Septon and his book. You do not speak like a man who believes that righteousness alone will carry a field. I credit you for that. I speak like a man who is tired of fields carrying righteous men to their graves, Ned said. He drew a breath that tasted of onion and cool iron and the faint lime of old mortar. You hold Harrenhal, and through it the river roads. Your men have burned villages. Mine have sharpened their axes in the snow. I came because if I spoke this by raven, you would think I held my courage in my fingers instead of in my deeds. I am here to offer you a binding truce set upon a contest that keeps the scale of things close to our own bodies. That is, I propose the contention of 7. That did draw Kevin's gaze sharply to him, and a sound from Adam that might have been unsheathed curiosity. Tywin's eyes narrowed. His mouth did not move. Trial by 7 is a thing Septons like to ink when they want to remind us of history, Tywin said. It is rarely invoked because it is dangerous in the way of things that seem pious until one considers the deaths required to sustain them. Even if I were disposed to it, why would I accept the faith structure under my banner? We are a practical house. You are, Ned said. So am I. The Northmen would stand beside the 7 somewhat awkwardly in prayer, but they know oaths bind no matter the roof under which they are sworn. I propose 7 against 7. Your champions, mine, not trial, but agreement. If your 7 prevail, my armistice becomes withdrawal. The north keeps its borders and returns to winter. The riverlords yield ransom and hostages to your satisfaction, and you move on Riverrun with acknowledged right. If my 7 prevail, you withdraw across the Gold Road to the boundary of your father's old map, and you will seek redress for grievances at a great council rather than through war. No side to press its claim upon the crown here. No side to strike the other's supply in shadow. We set the number of months. We exchange hostages to keep the peace during that time. Tywin was very still. The room considered itself again. The hearth cracked softly as a log surrendered and adjusted. The wind at the slit windows made the thin iron grill speak in a small voice of edges meeting edges. A raven cried outside with a throat like a hinge. And this is how you propose to stop a war, Tywin said finally. By starting a smaller one that the bards will remember better. By making the war honest, Ned said quietly. I have seen too much that is not. I have seen your banners above villages that had no business with any lions. I have seen boys with their hands gone. I do not pretend my side is blameless. I have men who are tired and hungry, and some do stupid, gladless harm when they are both. I do not sing them white. I do say that if we must break bones, let them be the bones of those who came here knowing their names would be set upon a wager. 7 on 7 is ugly. It is also measured. We will not end this with soft words, my lord. We can end it with oaths we do not enjoy keeping. Kevin drew breath as if to speak. Tywin lifted a finger. Kevin swallowed whatever he had meant to say and stepped back half a pace with a soldier's acceptance. Adam Marbrand looked into the hearth as if he might read a future in the places where flame licked the black. You propose hostages, Tywin said. Whose? Your son. Ned did not look away. The skin beside his eyes tightened minutely. If the terms be accepted, my daughter. He had not meant to say it, perhaps, but he did, and the word daughter lay between them with more weight than bread, more salt than salt. There was a soft shift in Kevin's face then, not sympathy and not its opposite. It was recognition of a pledge measured out upon a parent's rib bones. Tywin's expression did not change. If there was a pulse under his cheek, it was masked by the tightness of his skin. "You put your child in my keeping to keep your men from burning my wagons," Tywin said. "That is substantial." He rolled the word between his teeth as if tasting it for poison. "And in return? Your blood," Ned said. "Not your son, I would not presume, but a niece, a cousin. Choose the kin who would make your word true." Tywin's mouth made a short line. "You speak as if the realm were a ledger and we settle it with coin and seals. How will this keep the wolves from your north, Stark? You think the boy at Riverrun will be content to sit while gray men decide his fate over Slow Flame? Do not condescend to my boy," Ned said, with a flash of something like ire. "He is young, not wholly a fool. He will wait if I tell him the cause for which he rides is best served by the waiting, and if I swear him by the gods he understands. You would do the same, if your words still held weight among your choleric nephews." Tywin did not take umbrage. He placed the words on a balance. "Do you have 7 you would trust, and would they stand? Not knights bought for the hour, but men whose lives make the wager sensible. 7 is not a small number." Ned looked as if he were seeing again a line of men on a mountainside with a tower behind them that had been too white at noon. He knew the names and knew 1 or 2 were bones now under thin soil the color of old milk. He tastes a name like a cut of air. Something reeds whisper when wind passes. Then he looked at Tywin and said, "I have men I trust, and there are river lords whose grief has made them harder, not softer. I would have Blackfish if he consents. I would have men of the Vale whose swords are not currently occupied. There is the Great John, whose enthusiasm might be put to virtuous purpose for once. I do not name them all. It is enough that I know I can name them if called." "You risk others," Tywin said, and it might have been contempt if you did not know his contempt had iron in it rather than heat. "I risk others every time I send a rider out where arrows sometimes find them," Ned responded. "But yes, I do, and I will set my daughter's safety against it. That is how much I mean what I say." This was not sung speech. There was nothing graceful to the declaration. It was shaped like a carpenter's work, made to bear weight. Tywin paced 2 steps. His boots made almost no sound on the stone. Leather can be taught to hold its noise as a secret. He had considered something similar himself months ago, when he had woken to a night with no dreams and the faint smell of wet ash and heard no sound but his own breath counting. He had imagined 7 of his choosing. He had imagined Gregor there and Amory Lorch, and a boy he had not yet acquired who had a cruel way of smiling. He had imagined how the faith's old structure could be used to sanctify what was simply attrition given a prettier name. He had set it aside, because the risk of letting any old form govern him galled. Yet a truce was always a question of forms. All law was ritual first, practicality after. Kevin spoke then because he knew the moment when Tywin would actually listen to him. "Brother," he said quietly, "the harvest is going to rot in some fields. We have gone farther than we meant. Faster." The men mutter, not because they doubt you, but because hunger teaches even good men to invent complaints. If we can bind the river hosts to stay their hands, if we can secure the gold road to carry what we take. This gives us time. We need time as much as victory. Tywin's eyes flicked to him once. Then he looked at Ned again. "You propose terms spoken in this room that would be given the meat of oath by men not presently in it," he said. "Even if I were to accept, I will not have the appearance of being drawn by your earnestness to something rash. We will need witnesses. Men from houses who are not presently at one another's throats. A neutral septon if you must have one. And we will need days. I do not do anything that cannot be done on the table as well as on the field." "Then let us have days," Ned said. "I can send for such men. You can send for such men. We can send ravens whose messages are not cut in half by knives before they are read." He looked sideways and down, then lifted his gaze. "And you will give me leave to walk your yards and your kitchens and your smithies as a man who has eaten your bread. You will let me speak with your men who have done harm in your name. And you will listen to what they have done when I speak it, without dismissing it as war's necessary filth for which you are not responsible. That last was an audacity. The temperature in the room altered without a log being added or a window opened. Tywin did not do flinching. Instead, he looked at Ned's face for a long beat with his head slightly angled, as if studying a painting he was not sure he liked. "You will not hector me," he said finally. "I do not live on sermons. I do not wash in them in the mornings." "I will not sermonize," Ned said. "I will simply speak names, and you will choose what to do with them, whether to hang the men or shield them, or confess them to your sigil and call them necessity. I will not tell you what choice to make, but you will not pretend you do not know the choice exists. That will be your price?" Tywin said, thin amusement touching the corners of his mouth where it did not reach his eyes. "Words spoken in my hearing, to make you feel you have brought the weight of right into the room? Not my price," Ned said. "My condition for believing that you are negotiating in something like good faith. If we do this, we do it knowing what we are sheltering." Tywin measured this and found it, to his own faint surprise, not entirely intolerable. It offended him less than an accusation would. It gave him the dignity of not being told he was a monster. Indeed, it assumed that he knew what he was doing and deserved the respect of someone speaking frankly to him, as if he'd already decided to carry it. It was insulting in a peculiarly respectful way. He had known 2 or 3 men in his life capable of balancing insult and respect so that neither quite crushed the other. He had had those men killed or hired, depending on how useful he judged their tongues. "Very well," Tywin said at last. "We will draw up letters. We will summon witnesses, and we will speak again. Do not presume that this is acquiescence. It is consideration. If your condition for considering me in good faith is hearing the names of some unfortunate peasants whose sons fell under hooves, then you have underestimated what I am willing to bear for a better harvest next year. Speak your names. I will listen. Then we will see if the faith's ancient game cares to be revived for our convenience." A breath left Ned that might have been relief if he had been ranked among men who permitted that much luxury to their lungs. He inclined his head a fraction. "Then I will send my ravens," he said. "And will you provide me a place to write with a clean quill and space for a man to think?" "That can be arranged," Tywin said, with a brief look to Kevin, who was already motioning to an attendant. "You will be given quarters. They will not be good ones. Harrenhal eats good rooms, and vomits up only large spaces that are gloom pretending to be grandeur." "Gloom is not unfamiliar to me," Ned said. "I welcome it if it means I can think without the smell of spiced wine in my nostrils." "If you require misery to think," Tywin said dryly, "this castle can supply as much as you like." They made the expected motions then. Men who serve war learn to smooth down their own edges when the rail of custom demands a gliding hand. Kevin escorted Ned and his 2 chosen companions, Hallis Malin, broad as a door in a keep that needed mending, and a lean rider with pale hair and a bad knee who had refused to be left behind, through corridors whose drafts seemed to remember other drafts. Adam Marbrand stayed with Tywin. The Lord of Casterly Rock put both hands on the map and looked at it as if it were an animal he might break to the rein if he found the right place to put his foot. "You've thought of it too," Adam said after a silence in which both men listened to the muffled footfalls recede. "The 7. I think of 1,000 things," Tywin said, not sharply. 990 of them are discarded because they rely upon other men to know themselves." Adam looked at the fire. "Will he do as he says?" "Yes," Tywin said. "That is the danger." He tapped a finger once on the inked bend of a river. "And also the use." Ned Stark's assigned chamber had a slit through which wind wrote its thin script. It had a bench that looked as if it had supported men who had decided things and punished themselves for deciding. The table had a stain that was probably wine and certainly old. They brought him a quill, a knife that was honest about being used to sharpen quills more than throats, and a pot of ink that smelled of iron and a little of fish. A boy in a brown jerkin set these things down with the ceremonial gravity of a squire unsheathing his first sword before a lord. "What is your name?" Ned asked him because names anchor rooms. "Tom," the boy said, immediately and too loudly, then softer because the room made him feel foolish. "Tom Smallwood, my lord." My father was a cooper before the men with lions came, and now he tries not to be seen by them. Have you sisters? Ned said. I have one who is clever and one who is loud, Tom said. He seemed startled by his own words. Good, Ned said. You will fetch me a man of the kitchens who is not afraid to speak, and you will bring me a bit of bread, and something not spiced beyond my ability to taste the thing it covers. After that, you will go to the smith and tell him that the Lord of Winterfell wishes to see his work. Tom blinked and then grinned, quickly, like a candle that has trouble catching. The cook is not afraid to speak, my lord, he said. She isn't afraid of anything except cheese going wrong, and the smith likes to be asked if he can do better. I will say you asked. Do so, Ned said. He put the quill in his hand and felt its fine point as if testing a needle. He looked at the slit through which the lake light shifted. He thought of daughters. He thought of ice. He thought of a line of men facing a larger line, and the smaller number deciding the lives of the larger. He felt one of those rare moments when he knew he had been right to be born a plain man with an unadorned mind. Worrying about lanterns and laws and honest quills had given him a patience that would keep him from flying apart under the strain. The cook came as promised, with a towel thrown at her shoulder like a banner folded tight. She had shoulders like an ox and hands that could hold a hot spit without flinching for a beat longer than seemed human. She put a trencher down and stood, arms crossed under her apron, as if she had brought judgment rather than boiled beef. You ask. Ed for simple, she said. The onions are not burned. The bread is still breathing. There's salt if you want food to taste like a rock instead of a field. The onions smell right, Ned said, and tore a piece of bread. It let sighs of steam that had their own small honesty. You have fed men on both sides. I have fed men since I was 12 and my mother died, she said. She had the Riverlands in her vowels. They bring sigils and heirs and coin when they have it. They leave stories I don't have time for. I send food into their bellies. I don't choose their deeds for them, and they don't choose mine. But I know the names of those who have looked me in the eye when they ask for more. Do you know the names of those who did not look you in the eye when they took? Ned asked. He kept his voice gentle. She was a proud woman who earned her pride with heat and patience. She looked at him then in a way that measured whether he was asking a clever question to feel clever, or a necessary one to carry the weight of what would be done here. I know, she said. I know whose men snatched bread for their pockets with the look a child has when it steals because it is hungry and ashamed. And I know whose men reached for a girl's hair when there was stew enough. And I know the ones who kicked a bucket down because they like to watch something spill and spoil. Not all lions are the same. Not all wolves will be either. Tell me their names, Ned said. Not to use as a spur to your sorrow, but to say aloud so that when I speak them where the Lord who commands them must listen, I do not misremember and smear your truth. She nodded once, short, as if the ease of it surprised her. She began with the small names because she knew small names often carried truth better than titles. Ned wrote them carefully, the quill whispering. The ink dried as if it were old blood finally accepting air. By afternoon, the lake light had changed to a softer pewter that made everything in the chamber a little more human. The smith came and put a hammer down and spoke of broken rings on hauberks, and of how he had been interrupted in the making of nails to repair a cart that had been requisitioned. The word spoken with the bitterness of men who have been told the language of theft makes it moral.
Ned, liste Ned.
He asked about the iron. He asked about whether the men who wore the lion on their breast paid, or simply assumed that people in this place made more than they needed. The smith answered once with a length of silence that the room recorded. He walked the yard that evening with Hallis Malin at his shoulder and the pale-haired rider a pace behind, as if participating in the same thought without needing to speak it. He felt the eyes on him. He saw a man teaching his son to hold a bow, the boy's wrists too tender for the bowstring, the father's palms scarred from rope. A woman had set a stool up by a wall and was mending a cloak that had seen more water than warmth. A dog had decided it would live here now and not wherever it had lived before. It had that cowering bravery that animals wear when they are new to a place and trying not to be noticed. He smelled the smithy tang again, and the stable's sweet rot, and the latrine's bluntness, and the river's clean frankness under it all. He saw a tall man in a helm with a ridiculous plume. Plumes had always made him think of birds that got lost on the way to the sea and took up residence on a fool's head in a bitter compromise with fate, harassing a potboy for not moving quickly enough. He said the man's name to himself. He had heard it from the cook. He walked up to the man and took hold of his wrist just hard enough that the man felt his bones acknowledge another man's will. He spoke quietly, and the boy's eyes widened, but he obeyed the speed of his own fear. The tall man tried to be outraged and then decided against it as Ned told him where he would be the next morning and what was expected of him there. Words spoken with that plainness that kept men from choosing pointless revolt. Ned let go. He moved on. Night made something else of Harrenhal. A beast with too many ribs and a belly that was never full. Fires appeared like the eyes of a careful cat. Somewhere a man laughed and then tried not to. Somewhere else a woman sang to herself in a voice so small it seemed as if the song were singing her. The mist had gone. The stars were thin but there. The lake had become a deep breath stretched flat by cold air. Ned stood by the slit window and watched the star farthest to the north and thought of a hearth whose stones remembered a child running around it. And a boy bent over a map who would look up at a father and pretend not to have been trying to solve men. He put a hand to the roughness of the wall. The old gods had no faces here. He spoke to them anyway, not words of petition. He had learned that the old gods answer mostly with weather, but the sort of words a man says when he stands in the doorway, watching his house sleep, counting heads without moving his lips. In Tywin's chamber, the smell was of wax and steel and a faint cologne that he permitted himself the way a general might permit a music box its one song after a long march. Kevin had brought wine and not poured any for himself. Adam had unrolled a parchment and pinned it with a knife so that the corners would not curl. Tywin's finger tapped an empty space near a bend in the river. He did not need to point to the walls. He had memorized all walls long ago. "You think this will end the war?" he said without looking up. "I think it will slow it," Kevin said. "And that may be the same as ending it if men discover in the slow the thing they claim they want." "They want their homes not to be burned," Adam said, with a dryness as light as a cat's whisker, "and their wives not to be frightened, and their sons not to be taken for conscripts. They want a farm. They want to make bread. They do not want this castle. No one wants this castle." Tywin's mouth quirked once. He took the offered cup and set it down without drinking. "The boy in the north," he said, as if to test whether his tongue could make the concept into something neat. "He will want what boys want, to prove he is a man by killing one, then many. A truce will taste like ashes on his tongue. He will spit it out at the first hint of provocation. Unless the father makes him swallow it," Kevin said. "He will. He speaks as if his ribs are counted when he uses words. He will give orders as if placing stones that must bear weight." "I dislike relying upon other men's fathers," Tywin said. He considered his own father and scorn slid along the thought like rain along a slate roof. "But I acknowledge that some fathers are more useful than sons." Adam put his hands behind his back. "7, he said. "Gregor would be one of them. Gregor is a mountain and mountains sometimes fall when no one touches them," Tywin said coolly. "He is a blade, and I do not always choose to pick it up. He wins and he makes further war inevitable. He loses and he makes it inevitable faster." "Amory Lorch?" Kevin asked. He did not grimace when he said the name. He had learned not to show that kind of taste. "Amory kills good soldiers we might have conscripted on the morrow," Tywin said. "No, Ser Island, for the certainty of his hand," Adam said. "Island strikes fear in men who watch," Tywin said. "He does not strike fear in men who do. He is an end, not a middle." "Yourself," Kevin ventured, not because he thought his brother would accept, but because he wanted to see which response he would choose among the three that are possible to such a suggestion. Pride, honesty, or false humility. Tywin glanced at him with a look that used to dismantle children's bluffs. "Do not be foolish. My gout begins to write its own letters. I have other strengths to lend the cause than my wrist." "Adam," Kevin said then, not to flatter him but because it should be said, "if I am to die, Adam said. Let it be for something other than reminding men that the past had interesting games. But if it must be me, I know how to stand. And then there is your son. Tywin went still. For a moment the room arranged itself as if to accommodate some greater gravity. My son is not here, he said. The words had the shape of command rather than regret. He might be if we summon him, and that may be wisdom, or the thing that dissolves wisdom into salt. We will need names, Kevin said. Names that mean something to men on both banks. Names whose deaths, if they occur, bear weight that cannot be dismissed as bad luck. We will need a Septon who is not frightened of you and not offended by Stark. And we will need a black-humored entertainer, because this will draw a crowd and men need something to put between their teeth when fear would be better chewed. You will find me the Septon, Tywin said. Find me also 2 knights of no particular house who are brave, clean, and unremarkable to look upon. I will want them as witnesses to prove that not all relies upon heraldry. And write to Jaime, tell him to ride quickly and quietly. He is to bring with him men he trusts to stand and not fall because an audience stares at them. Quietly, Adam repeated. You do not want the realm to know that you are thinking of 7 until it is too late for them to suggest you were bullied into it. The realm does not bully me, Tywin said softly. It forgets itself sometimes. I remind it. He dismissed them then because a man who believes that work requires privacy must very occasionally practice it. He put his hands on the map again, and then took them off, as if relieved not to feel the small lie of parchment under his fingers. He sat. For a moment he let the silence in the room return to its own business. He thought of a girl with hair like poured gold who had learned how to use her beauty as if it were a kind of dagger that could be always concealed and therefore always brandished at will. He thought of a boy who wore a crown lightly until it strangled him. He thought of a son whose steel was not of the kind one sees. Then he set all that thinking aside like a dish whose contents meant something but could not be eaten yet. In the morning, the mist returned to watch. The lake breathed as if it had lungs. A flock of starlings turned on itself above the reeds like a thought remembering its beginning. The cook sent porridge as well as boiled eggs. She had decided that porridge made men consider justice better than bread. Tom Smallwood brought it as a cupbearer would bring wine to a king and only sloshed a little on the step. Ned asked him then about a girl he had seen in a corridor whose shoes were too large. Tom told him she was from a village 2 days away and had run because the man who was supposed to be a bishop had called himself something else inside a tent. She smiled with all her teeth, Tom said, and did not cry. Ned wrote this as if there would be a time when the details would matter or be used to keep a man from lying to himself. He wrote the girl's first name because that was what she had left. At a place along the inner wall where old smoke had stained it like seaweed stains hull boards, Ned stopped and listened without making it plain that he listened. The 2 soldiers below did not know his listening was a witness thing. One spoke of home. The other spoke with satisfaction about a thing he'd done in a hamlet with 3 chickens and a meager cow. Ned memorized his face. He memorized the cadence of his voice. He stepped back into the shadow and made no sound. Hallis Mullen looked at him once and understood. They moved on. They convened in a smaller chamber for the formalities later. A place with windows that, astonishingly, looked upon a sliver of tree and a bird's nest clinging to a branch like a knot of hope. Tywin entered with Kevin at his shoulder and Adam behind, and a priest F the 7 who was not fat and whose eyes did not dart as if trying to find a door. He had the look of a man who was not looking for anything in particular and therefore had no reason to be anxious. He bowed to both lords equally. He sprinkled a few drops of water that smelled clean. He placed a book on the table and did not thump it. He said nothing yet. He was there to record weight, not to add it. Lord Stark, Tywin said without sitting, you wanted to speak names into my hearing. Speak them. Ned did. He did not recite a list with the glee of accusation. He said them as one offers a ledger to be audited. This one took a girl's hair in his fist. This one burned a barn with men in it who had been tied to posts that once held horses, and left when the men screamed because he learned to like the way it sounded. This one kicked a dog for no reason and laughed when a boy cried, not because it mattered but because it made him feel tall. There were also names of men who had done right at risk to themselves. Men who had given bread without asking for coins to be shown first. Men who had taken a beating in an alley when they could have joined the beating and called it duty. Men who had said no and found themselves posted to the worst part of the wall at midnight. Tywin listened, his face like a mask a sculptor might use when trying to learn how to make marble resemble decision. He did not interrupt. Kevin's throat moved once, as if he swallowed something that was neither wine nor water. Adam did not look away. The Septon wrote a few names in his book with modest speed, his penmanship clean. "And do you suppose," Tywin said at last, "that as I call my captains in and say these names to them, sternly, as a father would to sons who have knocked over a jar, they will weep and vow to be better men? Do you suppose that?" "I suppose nothing," Ned said. "I oblige you to know that is all. If you shield them, name your shielding. If you hang them, name that too. If you send them home in disgrace to eat a winter of their own making, do it publicly. I am not here to instruct your conscience. I am here to be certain you keep one." Kevin exhaled through his nose then, loudly enough that it could not be mistaken for a random breath. There was something like relief in it, as if he had been waiting to hear someone say an impossible thing in a plain voice. Tywin's mouth grew a fraction thinner. He turned his head slightly to the side and then straightened it again. "We will conduct a hearing," he said, "after we have finished our business here. It will be done in the yard where the men eat. I do not do things in corners." Ned inclined his head. The Septon drew a line in his book that bracketed a paragraph, as if to say, "This section scales to the next one." "Now," Tywin said, "ravens, witnesses, and the matter of your daughter." It was a knife turned gentle and then not. Not to wound but to have the gleam of woundedness always in the room. Ned met his eyes. "I will send for her to be brought to Riverrun," he said. "You will send your chosen kin there. We will exchange under the eyes of men we both trust not to swagger. They will bear letters signed and sealed from each house that specify the terms of their keeping. Kindness, instruction, no harm done, no being used as a banner for mockery. If either is harmed, the truce is broken and the one who permitted the harm will be named dishonorable in words that will cross the realm." "Words," Tywin said. "Words that fell towers once," Ned said. He was thinking of a hall in which a king had learned the taste of iron. The Septon raised his head. "There is a form," he said, with a voice that sounded like ordinary bread smells. "The faith has sworn oaths like this before and seen them kept longer than men believed they would be. The book has the words. I will not beat you over the head with them. I will lay them out. You will sign or scratch or make your mark with a knife, so that the page knows your hand has touched it." Tywin's eyes tracked to him with a look that might have undone a lesser cleric's stitching. The Septon held the look and then looked down at his book again. Not triumphantly, but as if noting that an interesting bird had flown past the window and gone on its way. Tywin made a small sound that might have been amusement crushed into powder. "Send your ravens, Stark," he said. "I will send mine. We will do something that will make small men feel large because they were standing nearby when it happened. And we will test whether the old forms still have bone inside them." Ned nodded and stepped back. The formalities were ended for the hour. When he left, the hallways were filled with a light that could not decide whether it was morning or noon, and so was both. He walked and did not hurry. Men moved around him, doing the things men do when they are preparing for something that is not yet war and not yet peace. In the yard, a boy practiced striking with a wooden sword. His father corrected his feet, not his hands. Ned nodded once as he passed them, and the father did not smile. He did not need the tribute of acknowledgement to make his day feel worth the bread it would cost. That afternoon, the hearing in the yard took place. Tywin came and stood on the stone step with Kevin to his right and Adam to his left, which is not an accident. Men placed where they are by habit have the comfort of habit and therefore are less apt to do something careless. Rough tables had been drawn into a square. On them were tankards and plates and the memory of meat. Men gathered, their faces like a field. A harvest of expressions, some lean, some too softened by drink or ease, some lined with the years of wages and worry. The cook stood near the back with her towel at her shoulder. Tom stood near her knees like a very small squire. The smith came and leaned his hammer against his leg as if it grew there. The septon placed himself where he could see and be seen but not anyone's place. Ned named the first man. The man stepped out, pretending swagger, then standing at last, because swagger breaks when it is named by a voice that does not desire to fight it. Tywin did not say much. He turned his face slightly toward the man and asked how it had been. The man lied automatically like a habit of spitting. Tywin listened to the lie. Then he looked at the cook. She spoke 4 sentences. The man's lie collapsed under them. Not because the sentences were poetic, but because they were made of time and detail, of bread and burnt fingers and a girl with freckles who had learned to hold a pot lid like a shield. Tywin looked at the man again. He made a small motion with his hand. Guards took the man and there was a short scuffle, and then the scuffle ended. Tywin said, "Next." One man he spared, because the smith had held up a hand and said he had seen him drag an old fellow out of a burning barn by the belt. "We will not burn gratitude along with the evidence," Tywin said, and there was a ripple then, not of approval and not of its opposite, but of a kind of understanding that this was a yard in which things were being done in the open. 3 men he sent away in disgrace. 2 men he had flogged until blood oozed through their shirts, not out of a desire for spectacle. He had no such desire, but because punishment felt more like guilt when it could be counted. The cook watched with her jaw clenched. Tom did not watch the whips. He watched the men's faces. Ned stood to one side with his hands crossed before him and said nothing while these things were done, because he had fulfilled his promise to say names and had said them. He did not enjoy watching. He did not withdraw from it. Hallis Mullen watched with his jaw tight, and the pale-haired rider watched as if he expected to die sometime and wanted to be sure he had not misunderstood the world before he did. When it was over, Tywin stepped down and said to the yard, contingent on air and noise and the attention of men by then half interested in where their next tankard would be found, "War will make you do things you will carry in your bones forever. I will not carry them for you. If you do them, own them. If you refuse to own them, I will make you bear your back. If you refuse in both ways, I will make your blood prove to you that it still flows." He did not look at Ned as he said it. He did not have to. The words had been for him as much as for the yard. Ned took them and put them where he put other words he could not easily forget. That night the ravens went. Sleek bodies in the dim, cutting cracks through the damp as if they were arrows made of night. They carried letters to Riverrun, to the twins, because the ugly truth is that sometimes you need to put ugly men near important happenings to ensure they do not make uglier ones elsewhere, to a small castle on a bluff whose lord prided himself on being told secrets last and proved trustworthy because of that, and to the Vale, where some men needed to be told that the world required them even when they were most certain they would rather remain immured with their pride. Tywin's ravens went too, to Casterly Rock, to a garrison on a hill that had a name like a wineskin and a reputation for gambling with human lives, and to a road where a knight with a golden beard would be told that his father wanted him to pretend, for a while, that he was a quiet man. Ned slept, fitfully. His dreams refused to spend their pattern on his request. He woke before dawn, as he always did when his mind had important business. He went to the slit window and saw that the lake had drawn the fog back down like a blanket. The first bird was not a melodious one. Its cry was like laughter cut short by shame. He held the cool stone and told the gods he did not pretend to think they were listening. Then he asked them anyway to keep a girl safe on a road where there were men with heavy hands and boys with too much courage and women with knives hidden in their stockings. He turned and prepared for the day. He had writing to do. He had watching to do. He would need to find a man he had glimpsed in the shadows the day before, a man who held himself like a lord despite a cloak patched at one shoulder and eyes that did not belong to any one house in particular. He suspected spies the way the river suspects silt. He did not have the energy to unmask all of them or the desire to. Sometimes a spy is a useful witness if you understand the direction in which his report will be shaped. He would let the man watch him and then watch the man watching him until watching itself had its own gravity. Tywin had his own ritual. He let his servants move around him. shaving him with a blade that had been honed so fine that hair fell to the floor with the grace of snow. He ate bread and a slice of ham and drank watered wine. He permitted himself 3 minutes alone after Kevin had told him the morning's news, and in those 3 minutes he sat without moving and considered the world's order. Then he stood and moved that order as far as he could with letters and a voice and a stare that many men mistook for cruelty when it was simply the absence of patience for fools. By midday, Riverrun's first raven had not yet returned, nor had any from the Vale. Ravens do not bend to human urgency. Tywin walked the yard to be seen pointing at small things. Straw placed wrongly, a pike that had rust at its point, a cartwheel left leaning instead of properly propped so that it warped. He would be feared for larger things, but he knew that power is maintained by 1,000 small victories over sloppiness. Ned visited the makeshift infirmary in a half-ruined tower whose roof had fallen in long ago and whose gaps were covered now with canvas. He spoke to a man on a pallet whose breath came with a rattle and learned he had taken a wound rescuing a child from a burning mill because his own house had burned when he was 7 and he could know. "'T abide the sound of such crackling." Ned touched his shoulder and said nothing, and the man's breathing calmed as if someone had put a hand over the bellows of a small hearth. Near the kitchens, the cook argued with a man about potatoes as if the fate of the realm were decided by whether they were sliced lengthwise or round. Ned listened as if it might be so. Later he stood with a handful of men and watched 2 soldiers spar without anyone noticing that it was the Lord of Winterfell who had watched them, because he did not make small fanfare where small fanfare would accomplish nothing but the displeasure of good fighters. Hallis Malin muttered something about southern air making bones ache that had not ached north of the neck. Ned told him he could always go home at once and leave his lord to be murdered by a Lannister cook who had finally decided to season the onions with poison. Hallis said nothing for a moment, then grinned without showing teeth. By late afternoon, a raven came. It staggered when it landed because of the damp and as if insulted by it. It brought a reply that smelled of a riverbank and an old stone keep where fish scales sometimes flashed in a corridor. A scent which no one in the yard could smell but which clung to the letters for those who had learned to read with their noses as well as their eyes. Ned broke the seal with the care of a man opening something that might be as sharp as a blade even though it did not look like one. He read. He let the words line themselves in him. He looked up and saw Tywin across the yard, watching not him but the sky. "Riverrun agrees to witness," Ned said when, an hour later, they stood again in the smaller chamber. "They will send the Blackfish. They will send men who carry the Tully badge without apology. They will bring hospitality enough that if your niece or cousin arrives with fewer servants than she is used to, she will not feel their absence. They ask for the exchange to be made near the God's Eye's northern shore, in a place where the ground is firm and the wind is honest." "And our Septon?" Tywin asked. He did not mean the one in the room. He meant the one within whose presence the old ritual will have the look of law. "He will come." "He will," Ned said. "And he asks that the women be housed where light enters through more than one wall." Tywin made a soft sound. It might have been approval masquerading as disdain. "I will send my messenger," he said. "Cousin Damien's daughter will do. She has sense and no illusions about the safety of the world. She will not break, and she will not cry, and she will not give anyone his satisfaction. If you hurt her," he added as lightly as picking up a knife, "I will hurt your house in a way that will not end for 3 generations. If I hurt her, burn Winterfell and leave salt where the hearth stood," Ned said without heat. "We will not play at threats over our children. Send her. My daughter will meet her." Tywin looked at him for a long moment then, and if there was anything like respect in him, it manifested as a stillness that held back contempt. "Very well," he said. "We prepare then. We gather 7. We make men think an ancient custom is what saves them because that is the only way they will go back to their plows without dreaming at night of killing their neighbors for sport." "We do not need them to think," Ned said. "We need them to go back to their plows." "Yes," Tywin said. "That is why you are dangerous, Stark. You do not desire what men in my position desire. You are content with a thing so modest it makes the men in my tower look like ridiculous peacocks. You make me humor you, and in humor, you build a scaffold upon which we will hang our pride. "That is not my intention," Ned said. "No," Tywin said, and for the first time there was almost warmth in his voice, though of a kind that could not burn a man unless he put his hand directly into it. "But it is the effect." He dismissed them because men like them sometimes must pretend they need to be alone in order for matters to be moved, when in truth the movement happens when a boy runs with a message or a cook decides to spare the last pinch of salt. The hallways of Harrenhal absorbed the footsteps and gave back to the listeners the echo of old horses. Outside, the evening deepened with slow, planetary patience. The water of the lake kept its counsel. The kitchen woman sat and rubbed her wrists and decided the broth didn't need more salt after all. Tom Smallwood fell asleep in a corner with his head against a bucket and dreamed of an apple he had once stolen and not been punished for. The smith tightened his hammer's head on its haft and thought he had forgotten something and could not remember what. Across the river, a fish leapt at a fly and took only the water. On a road cut through fields, a girl with a sharp small chin rode with two men who did not wear their badges. She held herself as if to be brave as not to be without fear, but to ride sitting up straight inside of it. She had hair that caught light cleverly. In the other direction, a lady of a western house moved with a speed that suggested command. She thought of the sea, which she had never touched with her own hand, but which sang in her blood as if her name carried a distant tide. Between them, the air lay like glass in a craftsman's hand, waiting for breath and the shaping of it. In the halls of Harrenhal, where soot and wind are old companions, two men tried to hold the realm between them as if it were a bowl too large for anyone to lift alone. One held it with fingers made strong by restraint. The other held it with fingers made rigid by discipline that had been sharpened over wounds. Between their hands there was a trembling. It did not shatter, not yet,